see why I shouldn't use traditionally. So there have been at least 3 ways that societies organize an economy historically. This is what we have seen so far. Doesn't mean that there aren't more ways to organize an economy or society, but these are just the ways in which we have seen, and some of the main bins that we can kind of categorize these attempts in. The first one is the oldest, which is called the traditional economic model. So traditional economic models are typically agricultural communities. The model for these kind of situations are things are done the same as they always have been done. Or to borrow a phrase from our homesteading ancestors 100 and something years ago here, things are good enough. There was a spirit of, if you wanted to homestead land, you had to go and homestead the land and keep it up just good enough. And there has been a kind of spirit of that, I feel like, in terms of our reluctance to change and the conservative kind of attitudes that some of these places have towards new ideas. So when we talk about traditional economies, this, like I said, these are the oldest economic systems. These are still used today in parts of Asia, Africa, and South America. The whole gist of a traditional economy is, if your father was a rancher, you're a rancher. If your father, made shoes, then you made shoes, right? The occupations stayed in the family. Typically, there's very little to no trade. What you produce is what you consume. You gotta eat what you kill. And as a result of this, there is little economic progress or development found in traditional economies. This isn't the one that you would want to choose if you had your druthers, right? If you were playing SimCity, oh, that's a dated reference. If you were playing a game, you would not be choosing this in order to succeed in the long run. If you were playing Civilization, you wouldn't choose a traditional economy. The next type of economic organization that we have seen largely throughout history is called the command economy. So the command economy has centralized decisions. Typically, there is a governmental authority, and the government decides what to do, and they own all the resources. So again, when we talk about the government deciding what to do, specifically what we care about is, how do goods and services, how are they produced? How are people deciding to produce them? Well, in a command economy, the government is issuing edicts. They are the ones that are deciding what goods and services are produced. And how much to charge. In addition to this, the government is going to decide how they produce, right? It's going to say, well, you can't use this many robots, or you have to use this type of, smokestack filter for a coal plant, so on and so forth. So the government is very heavy-handed in a command economy, right? They decide what methods of production and they also decide what wages workers get. In a command economy, one of the only silver linings is that many necessities are provided by the government. So that needs part of the unlimited wants and needs is taken care of, right? Like healthcare and education. So some examples of command economies would be the biggest one that comes to mind is Egypt. How else would they have created those Great Pyramids? We also have medieval manor life. The I's before the E there, my bad. We have communist countries. So specifically, the last two communist countries are going to be Cuba and North Korea. North Korea more so than Cuba. So this is our second type of economic organization system. And what you're going to find once we get to the third one is that, yes, I have been setting myself up for a nice contrast between the first and the second and the third, right? So the third one is going to be our market economy. And this is an economy where economic decisions are decentralized. Right? They were centralized before with some sort of governmental entity. Now they are decentralized. What does this mean, that economic decisions are decentralized? Well, this means that businesses supply goods and services based on consumer demand. Another characteristic of the market economy, as opposed to the traditional and the command economy, is that the resources are owned by private individuals. You'll often hear, especially in more philosophical talks, about how, private property is one of the foundations of modern economic systems, right? And that's what this is talking about right here, is the whole notion of you have to have private property, and you have to have institutions that are set up to defend private property and to defend different property rights, right? That's why we have the court system. Otherwise, economic activity grinds to a halt. We had this issue in the People's Republic of China for a while, where there's very little incentive to put a ton of work on research and development for something, because there's no intellectual property protection, and as soon as you come up with something that is successful and sells, somebody else is going to reverse engineer it, rip it off, and produce it. And so that was an issue with entrepreneurship and innovation in China for a bit, last time I checked. And actually, you guys remember those, what were they called? Skywalkers? Those weird little two-wheeled things that you'd get on and you'd go. You guys, none of them? No. Anybody? Airwalkers? Airboards? Hoverboards. Yes, hoverboards. So an NPR person went back and tried to like figure out where did these come from? Like who actually invented these things? And what they found is that it was a group of 5 factory heads in China that would get together after work and just drink, and they would just fiddle around with stuff. So they would like bring the different random parts that they had from their factory, and so it was this like weird group effort where they actually couldn't figure out who was the single person that was responsible for creating these things. And then they just spread like wildfire, right? And then a lot of them actually caught on fire because they were so cheaply produced and there was no quality control. So anyways, private property, an important institution for economies to grow. When we talk about market economies, well, we're talking about markets, right? And what are markets? A market is a really amorphous term that is just any time we have interactions between potential buyers and sellers. In other words, this is a combination of supply, which is the buyer side, and demand, which is supply is the seller side, and demand, which is the buyer side. And in market systems, we talk about private entities, right? Private individuals or private entities that own and operate their own businesses. So they own the resources, they make the decisions based on demand, and as a result, we end up getting a growing economy. So market economies are highly associated with rapid economic growth, with all of the positives and negatives that come with that. Now we're going to finish off with one last slide, and then we'll switch over to our Kahoot quiz. So most economies in the world are mixed. Combining elements of all 3 of these types. Command, traditional, market. You know, the United States is more positioned towards the market-oriented side of the spectrum. If we just did command and market, let's just leave traditional out of it for a second. We've got the United States probably somewhere over here. We've got a bit more government involvement in places like Europe and Latin America. And closer to the command part is going to be our People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation. And then obviously all the way over here on command would be our Cuba, North Korea. All right, that's it for today, and we will pop over into our Kahoot.